Hello, this is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoy this video. Hello everybody, this is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Welcome to a How to Play Shenzhen I video. This is going to be for new players who've just picked up the game, looked at the manual, and your brain immediately went to some far distant country. This is the latest game from Zachtronics, whose previous games have also dealt with programming and using assembly language design for its puzzles. If you played TIS 100, or even in a more abstract form, Space Chem, and understood the concepts there, this will help you out to some extent. Like I said, this video is going to be aimed for new players, people again who have no idea what's going on. And what that means is we are going to be spoiling at least the first 3 puzzles. This will be enough to at least wet your whistle on the game, and we can talk a little bit more about the basic understanding. Another reason why we won't go further is that, quite frankly, I'm still trying to learn the game along with all of you. As I get further in, I may make more advanced or medium tier levels as the time comes. Before we get to actually loading up the game, I want to show, for those of you who are watching this who have no idea what we're talking about, why this game is so complicated to learn. This, my friends, is the 41-page manual that comes with the game. Zach Barth, the designer, definitely, I think he loves writing these things, because this looks just like a manual you would get like the first day of working at a job. We have our reference card. These are the emails we got. My application apparently been moved to China. And then we're learning about the interfaces of the microcontrollers. We have examples. The game uses assembly language, or assembly code language, in order to explain and to run through things. And while these examples are good, it doesn't take the place of actually having someone talk about it and showing you the code. I watched a friend's video of mine who just watching him go over things made things a lot easier to understand. And while I'm going to be switching off of the manual right now, I will be keeping it up for this entire video. On my end, that is. And you should be too, if you're playing the game. Alright. So as you can see, I've beaten the first 3 puzzles and like sort of a little mini game. This is our interface that walks us through sort of the story of the game. We get emails from our fellow employers here at Longteng Electronics Company, telling us, of course, to read the manual. And we have products to make. We can have as many designs as we want. We can copy, we can delete. We can rename it. And this is what you're looking at. Now, as you can see, this may not be the easiest thing to understand, but let's try and go through this. Over here you have the parts that you can use when you're building your programs. The microcontrollers, you can see the price over there. Here we have the actual device, or whatever we're working in. Over here we usually have either an input or an output. This is the circuitry that we draw. And this is the microcontroller in action. Here's the code. This was put into the game before we started to play it. Now down here you can see our current test run, how much our solution's going to cost, and how much power it will use. Power is determined by as many commands that it's running. The more commands you have, the more power it's going to draw. Down here, it's telling us the objective. And we can see that in the verification. Over here, you can see we can move the program forward one step at a time, or simulate the running as so. With these microcontrollers, in order for it to actually do anything, we need to sleep it. And the sleep command is SLP. Move will essentially move one value, the first over here, to wherever we designate as the second. ACK over here represents the accumulator, and it's basically a storage device for a number value. State tells us what the state of the device is in, so it's executing, it's sleeping, executing, sleep, and so on. And then the power is obviously how much power it's using. This is where the manual is pretty much required, as in order to understand what the programs and what the commands that you can actually use, you'll need to read this manual. Again, this is not going to be, if you're not used to programming, this can be quite hard to understand, especially if you have no background in programming logic or programming code. So we need to actually do something. So we need to take a microcontroller over here. Now the XO and the X of 1 here are for another kind of running. That is for, I want to grab the right names from the handy manual, the X bus types of pins. We're dealing with just simple I/O, or input and output. And that's P of 0, P sub 1. So we can left click and drag the circuitry out. We're not outputting anything technically, we're just having it generate a certain value. So what it wants us to do is we need to just copy this string. Very simple, we don't really need to do much. Either it's at 100 or it's at 0. Well, with this microcontroller, we only have 9 lines. We can't do any more. If we want to have more commands on a single microcontroller, we will need to use this bigger one, which, as you can see, gives us a lot more to work with. But it costs more, which would factor into the equation. It also has a second number storage in the form of DAT. So if we have a program that requires us to deal with 2 numbers, we would most likely have to switch to the MC6000. Bridge, I'm still not sure what that does yet. But let's get back to this. Just to make it easier to clean up, we'll drag a new one over. Make sure it's connected. There. Now, when we're running this, in order for the program to do something, it needs to sleep. That's when it will essentially move forward in time. So when we run it like this, the first command tells it to do something, tells it to get something ready. The sleep command will tell it to basically hold at that previous command for as many time units we have specified. And each time unit basically represents 1 second. So sleep 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. After that, it moves to the next command, which will set for move 100 from P sub 0. Or it will move 100 into the hole here. So step, the 100 is being transferred to active, and it's going to sleep again for 6 time units, or move forward 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Once it gets to the bottom of the chain of commands, you can see our little cursor, or the command moves back to the top. 1 second. I'm going to, let me see, Can I lower the sound? There we go. Because I just have a feeling that you may be having a hard time hearing me. There we go. So it's time for us to actually type something in. So because we are dealing with a pattern, we simply just need to get it to do this pattern, and then it will repeat it on its own. So the first thing, I want to move 0 to P sub 0, and we want to do this for 4 time units, not 6, because remember, we're dealing with network, because active has already been done. So 1, 2, 3, 4. After that, we need to do something else. So we need to tell it to move 100. And this kind of I/O, or input-output, only goes from 0 to 100. I want to tell it to move it to P sub 0, which will send it towards the network, which in turn will turn this light on. Now, I wanted to do that for 2 time units. As you can see, 1, 2. Now, it sounds like we got this, but remember, we still have this little section to do too. So, move 0, P sub 0. I want to do it for 1. Move 100, P sub 0. Sleep 1 as well. Once it gets to the bottom, it will shoot back up and start back from here, which is what we want. So, let's see what happens. 2, 3, 4. Turn it to 100. 1, 2. Go back to 0 for 1. Go back up to 100 for another. And then repeats the cycle. As you can see, for each time it runs through it, the power is going up. And we're done. Now, as you can see, we're rated on three ratings. How much it costs us to make it, how much power we use, and a third one which is not available yet. So as you can see, one of my friends has figured out how to do this with less power, which means that they're probably using less commands. The question, though, is how, and that we could probably spend a few more minutes on. That's not really the point of this video. We just want to cover sort of the basics of the first 3. So, let's get out of here. We'll move to number 2. So this time, control in, control out. So it wants to take the signal from control in, multiply it by 2, copy it to control out. So this time we need to connect. So what we need to do now is we're going to take a value from control in, we need to operate on it, and then we need to transfer to control out. Because we need to operate it or do something to that number, we're going to use ACK or accumulator for this. So I'm going to move from P sub 0 to ACK. That's going to take a value and send it over. Very simple. Now, as you can see, because it's not sleeping, time is not advancing. But the power drain certainly is. Now for this one, it wants a value for every second or every time unit. So, in order to do that, we need to go to our manual. And actually, and what I'm going to do to make it easier, I'm going to switch back to the manual here so you can see what I'm looking at. We're going to go down These are more of our basic to the arithmetic. Wow, I can't talk anymore. Arithmetic instructions. Yeah, I think that's right. Sorry about that. So here are the operations: add, subtract, multiply, not. If the value in accumulator is 0, store value 100, or store 0. And then dig and des here will basically work like this. So it lets you either take a number or take a value, and that will be the new value stored in ACK, or it will replace or set. So let's get back to the game here. So we want to multiply, so mul2. That's going to take whatever's in the ACK, multiply it by 2, and then we want to move ACK to P1 or control out. Now that is correct, but it's not working. And the reason is time is not advancing. So, if we put sleep up here, it's going to fail. And the reason is that time advanced 1 unit without anything being done. Now we'll work from them on, but that's not what we need. So we need to come back up here, sleep 1, and now this will work without a hitch, hopefully. Again, you can see the power going up. You can see all these are now using power. It's transferring, and we're good. Very simple. No one's figured out a way to make this better, at least on my friends list, so that's good. And now for the third one. This will be the last one we're going to show. It's also the most complicated of the starting ones, as we're going to be making use of conditional statements. And conditional statements is when things get a little bit more tricky. The idea is, for this one, it's taking something from button. When the button is held down, it wants to generate a pulse. And if we look at this, it wants to generate a pulse like this. So every second that the button is held down or is at 100, it wants to go 100, go off, go back on, off, on. You get the idea. So this is going to require conditional statements. First, we need to do our connection. And now to do conditionals, I'm going to switch back to the manual for a second so you can see the right page. This is the page that tells us about testing or conditionals. How it works by using TEC, TGT, or TLT, and TCP, we're doing conditional testing. So TEC is if the value of the first operand, that's this one, is equal to the value of the second operand, that's this one. If it is equal, it will basically turn on any commands that have a plus sign before it. If it's not equal, it will do any commands that have a negative. So let me switch back to the game. So this is what they're referring to. I did the wrong one. There we go. So this plus would only activate if we did a conditional that was proven true. Commands with a minus will only operate if the conditional says that the statement is false. And again, we need to also sleep and advance time. So, we can also introduce the concept of labels as well. A label is a word followed by a colon. And then to get back to it, we simply type jump and the name of the label. So if it gets to this command, it will immediately go back up to wherever that label is. So the first thing that I wanted to do is I needed to check whatever the value is that's coming in from P sub 0. So to do that, we're going to do move P sub 0 into ACK, sleep 1. As you can see, that's moving the value in. Next thing we need to do, once there is a value there, or after it moves in, we want to test it. And again, to test it, we're going to use the TEQ command. TEQ. And I am going to test. Actually, we may not even need P sub 0. We may not even need that right now. We can make this a little bit easier to understand. And part of the fun of this game, or quote-unquote fun, if you're programmingly or program inclined, is to figure out ways of making this easier to go through or more refined. So I'm going to check right away P sub 0 with 100. If it is 100, I wanted to do something. If it's not equal to 100, I wanted to do something else. So let's actually test this right now. Let's say move 100 to P1. As you can see, it's just going up. It gets to the 100, or it gets to the test. P sub 0 is now pulling 100 in, which means that now the plus is going to activate. But we have a problem. It's not sleeping anymore, which means time is not advancing. It's just going between these two. So let's try this. Go forward, go forward. Now, when it goes forward, see, this will be a little easier. So we're getting to part of the equation. This is good. But there's a problem. It's not doing the pulse. So let's try something else, shall we? So when it is on, well, actually first, we'll put command right down here. So we'll always go forward. So we're testing to see if it's on, so we'll perform all commands with a plus before it. So I want to tell it to move 0 to P1, sleep 1. And this may actually solve it. Let's see. So let's go over what it's doing right now. The first thing the program does is it is testing what's in P sub 0 to 100. So it's seeing if it's comparing if p sub 0 is equal to 100. It's not. And because it's not, all this code is not being activated. So it advances time 1 second. Now we're at the 4th time unit, or when there is now a value of 100. So now p sub 0 is being compared to 100, 100, 100. It will now perform these commands with a plus sign. So let's watch. So now that it's active, it's going to run through those 4. So it's going to move 100 to P1, sleep for 1, move 0, sleep for 1, and you can see we have a new problem. The issue is that, remember, it's only performing this command. It's performing this command every time, no matter what. So, let's put a minus. So now it will only perform that final sleep 1 if the conditional statement is false. Go back up, check, move. Go back up, check, move. Okay, so now it's 0 again. When it performs the test, it's going to prove to be false, which means instead of performing the plus commands, it will switch to the minus. Repeat, and we got it. Not only did we get it, but we used less commands for it, which means less power. Boom. And I moved up to 2nd place on one of my friends list. Take that, everyone. So one of my friends managed to solve it with 1 less power usage. Which means they may have figured out how to do this with 1 less command. But I also want to show you how to use labels, and I can actually do that very simply with my first solution to this puzzle. As you can see, it costs a lot more power. So let's see if you can make sense out of this one. I'll give you a second while I take a sip and see if you can read what this program is saying. Okay, so did you figure it out? Well, let's go over it. Start with a colon. This is my label. When we call a jump command to start, it's going to send the prompt back up to this label. The first thing it does, it's going to move. I wonder if the circuitry is an actual effect of that. We'll look at that in a second. I want to keep on this train of thought. So, the move goes from P sub 0 into the ACK. Takes the value from here, pulls it over there. The microcontroller will now check if ACK is equal to 100 or if it's not. If it isn't equal to 100, it will perform these negative commands. Sleep for 1 time unit, and then jump to start, which means it's going to go here, and then immediately come back up. Now, let's say it's equal to 100, so moves P sub 0 into ACK, checks ACK for 100, it is equal to 100. What we'll do then, move 100 to P sub 1 or the pulse, sleep a cycle, move 0 to P sub 1 of the pulse, sleep for another cycle. So it's performing that pulse command. Once it's finished with that command, it's going to come back up and go back to start. It's going to move the value again, which in this case, because when the pulse or the button is always on, it's always going to generate 100. So it's going to essentially move 100 and nothing really happens. Check again, Still on, repeat. And the better way to do it is let's run it. Now, as you can see, this is quite wasteful in terms of power. We're performing extra commands that we don't really need to. If we remember from the other solution, we didn't need to move the value into ACK. We can simply test it right then and there. So let's go back to the better solution. As you see, we're just pulling the value from P sub 0 and immediately checking it. We're not doing anything else. And then we're immediately, and then from there, we then have the conditional statement. So move and do all that. I wonder. I'm just trying to think on my own right now. I think I can actually make this a little bit better. Let's see. Yes. Because I always wanted to sleep after it does something. I'm basically taking one sleep command and letting it work for 2 conditions, whether it's on or off. So this will actually use less energy, I hope. Was a little bit better. Let's see. And again, you can see how the conditional statement is being used. And it worked. But my friend is still beating me, and other people are definitely beating us as well. Could also be understanding the programming more, and even just having access to other parts here that can also be brought back into these older puzzles. But that's going to wrap up this play. Again, anything that we've seen so far is going to be a spoiler, so I'm going to stop it right now. If you have any questions, again, be sure to leave them below. Either I'll be able to answer them, or most likely someone else watching this video will be. And if you really want to see a moderate to advanced play of Shenzhen I, we may be able to do that in the future. But for me, I got more of the manual to be reading through right now. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up here. Once again, I'm Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again real soon with another video on more great games. Anyway, have a great night. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoy it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.